All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. So it's finally time to talk about VORUNA. Apologies for the delay. I wanted to give them a little bit of time to maybe make some changes or fixes to her, and then also I had a birthday. So a bit of a delay, but let's discuss VORUNA. Notably, they did not make any changes to VORUNA, at least not yet. Though I am recording this on a Sunday, so I could just be eating my words as you're watching this on Monday morning, and a bunch of changes come through, so yeah, well, you live and you learn. So with that, VORUNA is not horrible. I think that she has a lot of cool stuff going on, and she has a playstyle that works, that I think is fully functional. I just wish that she worked together with herself a bit more than she does now, because she kind of needs a lot of other things to be happening for her to be really great. So with that, let's talk about the build. So, first and foremost, initially, I thought I was going to have to build VORUNA pretty tanky, but it turns out that I would actually put VORUNA more in the camp of just an invisibility tank, such as, like, Loki or Avara, where just simply not being there is her form of tanking because of her one, and you wanting to be in it pretty much 24/7 constantly. And with her one, because it is not constant invisibility, because whenever you attack, you will break it, I would actually make her, if any of you are familiar with League of Legends, she is a very Rengar-feeling Warframe in the way that I think that she should be played. Also, notably, she is zero Forma. I could, theoretically, unlock this Exilus slot and put, like, Cunning Drift up there for a little more range, or Power Drift, or perhaps Prime Sure-Footed to make it so that I'm not using Fangs of Raksh's passive so much, and I could be using, I guess, Shroud of Dinar's passive a little more. But those things really don't matter, and I don't feel like any upgrades past what's here are really going to change the scope of what VORUNA generally really wants to be doing, which is going in and out of invisibility and assassinating groups of enemies. So, with that is the build. We're using Combat Discipline here. Notably, you do not have to use this with her, but I am using it for Arcane Avenger because this will hurt me, and then Avenger will proc, and I get plus 45% critical chance as a base stat on things. If you do not have Avenger, or you don't have Combat Discipline, although I think it's much more likely you won't have Avenger, you can actually use Shepherd is actually not a terrible option if you don't want to Forma her. Obviously, all like the usual suspects for like Energy Siphon and all that business are all going to be great here. But if you don't want to change this polarity, you can use, Shepherd is fine. Like Aerodynamic is okay because you do jump when you use your one, and sometimes that matters. But mostly there's not really a whole lot of great D polarity stuff here. You could throw Rejuvenation in there. I guess it's good against Toxic Auras, I guess. But most of these don't really matter. Combat Discipline, though, does synergize if you were using Avenger, so I've chosen to go with that, as it's pretty much just the optimal choice with this polarity pretty easily, because instead of saying what it says Activate Avenger, which means I get 45% crit. My other Arcane is Arcane Fury, which is on critical hit, 6% chance for 180% melee damage to melee weapons for 18 seconds. This just says more melee damage. That's all it says. Pretty cut and dry there. Other stuff on here. I have Rolling Guard. Notable thing, I accidentally did not replace Adaptation whenever I did the test run, so I actually don't have Rolling Guard for the test run you guys are going to see later in this video. It's very unnecessary. Adaptation really didn't do anything, so I kind of did the run with an open mod slot, really. But yeah, the stats here are pretty simple. She doesn't have a strength threshold that she wants, but she does want strength so that her one is more powerful. And also, like, I guess the damage on her too. But besides that, she just wants a good chunk of range so that her 2 spreads to enough enemies so that you can kill a huge group of dudes and have a ton of duration added to Lyceth's Hunt, which just makes your energy economy better. Lyceth's Hunt, because we are always using melee to kill enemies, that gives us energy from Equilibrium, which gives us a very, very good energy economy as long as there are enemies for us to kill. And the additional duration that we have is, of course, affecting Shroud of Dinar. Usually, we're almost never using the full duration of this, but for exiting missions or going like between zones, the 25 seconds is very good. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on here. I mean, she's pretty low investment considering you can just drop Rolling Guard, you could use regular Intensify, and you could use regular Continuity, and you're pretty much going to be at 100% parity here. And also, like, rank 8 or 9 equilibrium is really going to get you everywhere you need to go. So the build is very, very low end to get some good stuff going. Except, unfortunately, because Ulfrin's Descent is not very good, you need a heavy attack melee weapon. And unfortunately, because Lycus Hunt's passive was nerfed before launch from 100% heavy efficiency to 90% heavy efficiency, it means that we don't get to do a unique build on our heavy weapons. You just need a good heavy attack weapon that always procs slash. In this case, I'm using the Inodem, and the reason I'm using the Inodem is because I haven't made a video on this yet, and I figured I might as well include it here. This is the build for the Inodem. It's 2 Forma. Pretty high investment in terms of like the mod quality that's seen here. But once again, aside from Primed Reach, you can use like the lower variants of like Fever Strike and Prime Pressure Point, and you're going to be just fine. It's going to do pretty much the exact same job, although you won't get as many upfront kills. You'll get a few more on the back end of the slash killing enemies. With that, in terms of the evolutions on the Inodem, I'm using more range, as one is wont to do. Of course, this is the right choice. And then increase the range of aerial melee attacks. There's no good choice on this, but this is the one that I went with. Do whatever you want. And then we have Reach, the 3x combo, and Heavy Attack to activate Incarnate Form. This just lowers the barrier for activating Incarnate Form, which you always want to be in, and you're always going to start at a 2x, so this is really easy to reach and then just get into. And then Collecting Ammo grants 5 melee combo counter. This also really doesn't matter, but there's not any great Evolution 5s either. And if you're using a weapon like that's not a melee, then theoretically you could use this to get the Inodem to proc without having to use regular hits, and you could just keep heavy attacking, but it's kind of whatever. Aside from that, like, this weapon is a very good heavy attack melee. I've noticed that it is a little buggy and sometimes just won't transform, but that doesn't really affect VORUNA at all because its base form is also just fine. And it just needs any heavy attack weapon that is going to instantly proc slash, because that is like a big basis of what you want to be doing here. Reaper Prime does the job. You've got all of the Nakanas that can do it, all of the daggers. You have, like, the Tenet Grigori is a solid enough option. You've got the Glaive Prime, which is very, very good. Anything that's going to proc slash on its heavy attack is really going to be everything you want to do here. Hate is like the same as the Reaper Prime, essentially. They're very, very minorly different. Tons and tons of weapons. Just choose one which is just your, like, flavor win or whatever. That also proc slash on heavy, and you're going to get pretty much identical results as to what you're going to see in this video. Also, very worth noting, you need a companion that has a synth mod on them. If you don't have it, you won't be able to pick up health orbs at max health. However, of note, combat discipline makes you lose health. So if you go with this, it will also work whenever you are, like, without a cat, or if you, for whatever reason, don't have any of those mods to put on your companion or any of your other gear slots. I forget what other stuff they can go on besides companions, though. But yeah, so combat discipline also kind of patches this up, and if your companion is dead, this will also just still allow you to keep doing the thing that you want to be doing. But yeah, you have to make sure you have some way to pick up health orbs at full health, otherwise her energy economy is at risk. So make sure you have that figured out. Now, in terms of her abilities, we have some passives on each of her abilities. I'm just going to go over them real quick. First, we have increased parkour velocity on her 1. You activate these just by holding. You can swap mid-mission. Increased parkour velocity is really nice. You go quite far. You do a good zoom. This is not bad at all. Very fast, very quick. We love to see it. This is very, very nice for getting to the ends of missions, and you're super fast. It's fantastic. We love, like, giant parkour velocity increases. As, of course, the new Helmet Shard system, or Archon Shard system, it's just in Helmet, has taught us that increasing that stat is extremely, extremely good. Also on her 1, we can hit it and go invisible, and then we can run faster. So we're going to have faster sprint, and then the passive is that it's just all about going fast in terms of a lot of the stats. And then when we go invisible, if we kill an enemy when we're coming out of invisibility, we will get not only 100% status chance, but also an additional 3.36 crit multiplier with our current strength. That goes up with strength. The duration scales up as well. Status chance can't go above 100%, but it's usually going to be there. The buff duration, you just need to keep getting melee attacks out of the Shroud of Dinar, and then you're just going to have, like, decent-ish. I wish the duration scaled up better for this. You're just going to have decent-ish, like, duration on having a big, huge crit buff that is going to give your melee attacks a lot more power, especially if they are heavy attacks, which are pretty much always going to crit. And then we have the Fangs of Raksh. So the Fangs of Raksh, you activate this. This gives you status effect resistance, so you don't get knocked down is pretty much the TLDR. This is good for that. You're going to have this on most of the time, I would say, unless you're exiting a mission, in which case you're going to switch to your 1. But just being status immune is great. So you want to not get knocked down, because being knocked down is one of the #1 things that can kill you. Activate this. On the 3rd, just go through the rest of the passes. We have the increased heavy attack efficiency. Like I said, this is unfortunately 90%, not 100%. 100% would be an interesting build around. 90% is not. We can already do that. And then for her 4th, it is an extra life, which basically means if you would die instead, no. This is arguably just as good as this one, because this is preventing you from getting knocked down and killed, and then the 4th will prevent you from dying when you get knocked down and killed. So it is what it is. Otherwise, the rest of the abilities, we have her 2. I'm just going to have these 20 Corrupted Heavy Gunners here. Her 2 will have you leap at an enemy and put 5 statuses on them. When they die, they will spread statuses around to the rest of the people around them, which will often do a pretty good job of like stripping armor, increasing damage if you happen to be using a condition overload, which you really don't need, and all that good business. This mostly is a primer for those statuses for synergy with your 3, which this does have. And your 3 is that buff we talked about. So whenever you get melee kills, you will drop energy orbs, or, well, health orbs, as you can see. And that's what this makes happen. It gets the health orbs to drop. You pick up the health orbs. You get energy for it. It's quite good. Also, if you get, like, headshot kills, it gives you energy orbs. And, like, if you have 5 statuses on an enemy, and you kill them, then it gets higher duration. So you basically use your 2, put 5 statuses on a bunch of enemies, kill them all. It gets a ton of duration, lasts like 60 seconds or so. And you can just keep boosting that right back up, so you never have to cast your 3 over and over and over. And then finally, and unfortunately, we have her 4. So these enemies are obviously level 190, and they're Corrupted Heavy Gunners, but her 4, she gets down on all 4s, and she gets 5 attacks. You can use this while invisible, and it won't break invisibility, but this is not super impressive. It gets a damage multiplier if it kills an enemy, but it's pretty rough, even with my cat giving me viral procs on all these enemies, for this to really get much done, and it costs an absolute ass ton of energy to keep spamming that over and over. And as compared to the alternative of just hitting the heavy attack button on your melee and then recasting your 1, it's pretty much just not worth it, because the way that this looks, if you just use, you know, the other way, well, I'll pause so it's the same, is you turn your 3 on, and then you use your 1, use your 2, which also just keeps your invisibility, and then you use your ult here, and you just keep going back into your 1, so you're never not invisible, and you get to keep just doing these like super hard heavy attacks while moving very fast while you're in your 1. So you don't have to like go through all the business of like doing all these leap attacks and shit. You can just cut out the middleman and just swing a melee weapon. And the reason that's worth it is because, like I said, your 4 isn't particularly good. It's just not strong enough. It does have kind of a condition overload built in, but honestly, that's like just not good enough, because I can do like 2 1s here and I'm out of energy. I'd have to have Prime Flow in my build to even like get this started. Yeah, and like you can get those slashes on other enemies around, but like it's just not great. Like it's just not great. Her 4 is just not strong enough as compared to just wielding a decent melee weapon. And that's kind of the unfortunate bit. Also, her 3 only procs on melee kills, and her 2 and 4, which are ostensibly melee attacks, considering like the jump in and claw strike and the jump in and claw strike, ostensibly those are melee attacks, but they do not proc her 3. For whatever reason, they are not considered melee attacks, which is just really, really sad. I think that VORUNA is really not far off from having like a fully cohesive kit that doesn't like have to rely on a melee weapon outside of it, but like could still use a melee weapon if you wanted to, by just making it so with her 2, make it so that if an enemy is killed while you're in your 4, the all the statuses spread Like, if an enemy is killed by you, obviously not anyone, because then you could just, like, AFK with it, and that would be bad. But if an enemy is killed by you while you're in your 4, have all of the statuses that are on them spread, which would mean the slash procs that your 4 is giving to enemies would then spread out and keep killing more enemies, which would allow you to just, you know, keep going and going and going. And keep recasting your 4 and, like, you know, getting in there. And then also making it so that your 2 and your 4 are considered melee attacks. Or, like, they just proc your 3 in terms of dropping health. Because the fact that they don't just means that, like, the melee is immediately better because it creates an energy economy for her. But yeah, she's fine. Like, there's nothing, like, she's not horrible or anything like that. Like, you could just definitely play her. She's, like, a very, like, you know, spammy for her one play style. But some people are, like, going to be fine with that. For me personally, I think that it's, like, you know, it's a little, like, you know, one heavy attack, one heavy attack, one heavy attack, one heavy attack for me. Whenever there's lots of frames where you could just, like, you know, throw roar on them and put on their ability that makes them tank and then just do the exact same thing, essentially. But you do get a different flavor of damage buff here with the critical multiplier and things like that. And being able to put the statuses on, and, like, of course, just the aesthetic of the frame, which I think is outstanding. I think she looks phenomenal, is, of course, there. I'm using the Void Shell here. But, yeah, I think that she just needs a little more connection between, like, Ulfrin's Descent and Fangs of Raksh and kind of the rest of her kit. Because right now, Fangs of Raksh and Ulfrin's Descent feel a bit disconnected. Because you're only really using the Fangs to give extra duration to Lyceth's Hunt. And really, the core of the build for her feels like you're using Shroud of Dinar plus Lyceth's Hunt plus a heavy attack weapon. And without even using the passive of Lyceth's Hunt, because it's not 100%, you're just, like, using that to kind of make a melee build that a lot of other Warframes kind of already have. You just get, like, her flavor of it instead. And I feel like there's so much more potential than that here. So I'm a bit disappointed with her, and I'm not, because, like, her flavor of the, like, just doing heavy attacks build is a little different. But there's such a deeper thing that feels like it should be available here, and it just kind of isn't. But yeah, that's gonna do it. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. And if you have not, go check out the Grendel video, as Grendel's rework is, like, absolutely fucking immaculate, and is, like, basically perfect. So yeah, go check that out. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Enjoy the Steel Path run, and I will see you tomorrow.
Show Grenier harvesting Kuva nearby. Set off the alarms to draw them out, then steal their Kuva catalysts. Predictable. As expected, Grenier have shut down the environmental systems, sending modified life support capsules. Use these to sustain your environment or attach Kuva catalysts to begin harvesting. extraction.
fought well. Good dance, all.
All right, credits time. I'd like to take this time to, of course, thank all of the super patrons, $10 plus patrons: Aidenson, Brutus Salazar, Donald Stevens, Dylan Dworsky, Ithrain, Jacob Bean, JC4 Science, Jefferson Clark, Joshua Adams, Luzanth, Alec X. Williams, Petra Zanka, Mitchta, Nicholas Gridley, Paradise, Shen Harden, Victor, and Zach Zahner. And of course, thank you to all of the $5 patrons and our $2 patrons in the credits as well. Thank you very much for helping support the channel. I very much appreciate it. And there should be a lot coming to the website going into the kind of new year here. We've got the big frame review on the horizon here and such. And of course, VORUNA has been added to the site as well for easy going through all the business. Thanks, everybody.